All right, you made it. Hi, everybody, and well, having a wonderful day thus far. I'd like to thank you for tuning in for today's Survicate 101 Getting Your First Survey Response webinar. My name is Maciek, and I'm the Digital Customer Success Manager here at Survicate. I'll be flying solo today, which means I'll be your host, educator, presenter, all of that. No co hosts, just you and me breaking it down together. So, buckle up and let's get this thing started. But before we get to the good stuff, let's take care of some housekeeping. So, for everybody wondering, yes, indeed, this webinar will be recorded and sent to you after the fact. That way, you can go over everything that's been covered at your own pace whenever you want. At the end, we'll do a 15-minute Q&A, so please feel free to write in your questions throughout this webinar. In fact, you can even start right now because we want to fit in as many questions as we can within that 15-minute time slot. And if I don't get to your question, don't worry, because after we finish up here, I'll reach out to you personally with an answer. Nobody gets left behind, right? So, a quick rundown of what to expect today. First, I'll teach you a little about what Survicate is in case you're new to the party. And then I'll highlight the importance of getting your first survey response, and we'll follow that up with some best practices that you can take to ensure that you're truly getting the most out of your surveys, which will lead us into the crafting your own survey portion where you'll learn how to make your own effective surveys quickly. You won't want to miss this. And finally, we'll conclude the webinar with a 15-minute Q&A. So, what is Survicate? Some of you might be asking. And to sum it up in one sentence, Survicate is an effortless survey software. So basically, scaling customer feedback doesn't have to be difficult. And from our perspective, we make it easy because ultimately, Survicate makes the entire process of gathering customer feedback and acting on it effortless. So this means it's easy to get started, it's easy to create surveys, as you'll see today during the demonstration. It's easy to automate your workflows around it, as well as incredibly easy to integrate your favorite tools with it. So, if you have a digital product or running a service and are looking for an effortless software for getting continuous customer insights at scale, give us a try. It's free to get started. I hope you like my pitch. All right. So, the main topic for today. At first glance, your first survey response might not seem like much, right? It's just one. So then the question becomes, how can I turn one survey response into countless high quality responses? Well, that's just it, right? Your first survey response essentially kickstarts the feedback gathering process. It's the foundation on which you will be building on. So, what else can you get from a first response? Well, how about validation? If you've gotten your first response, you're doing something right. It could be a validation of your survey's design, structure. So, pat yourself on the back or give yourself a hand, right? It's a great start. However, apart from validation, getting your first survey response, it can be a great morale booster. You might be a little anxious about your survey's effectiveness, right? Well, your first response can be that confidence boost you were looking for to continue on with your journey. It also sets a precedent. Well, it shows that your survey is viable and that respondents are willing to actually engage with it. That's a great sign, especially if the feedback is of high quality, right? This precedent suggests that your survey is worth participants' time and attention. As you can see, your first survey response might not seem like much at first, because after all, it's just one response. But think of it in metaphorical terms. Your first survey response are like your first baby steps, right? You can't really run without walking first, one step at a time. I hope you're starting to get the bigger picture. Mm, your first survey response begins your feedback gathering journey, but what can you do to ensure that your first response doesn't end at one? What can you do to ensure that you truly gather high quality feedback that you can act on and get the most out of your surveys? Well, I'm glad you asked because getting people to take your surveys isn't always easy. Luckily for you, I've come up with some best practices that I think will take your survey creating game to a higher level or to any level if you've never created any surveys in the first place. So let's start off with a very powerful and important practice, the right audience. That's right. You guessed it. Sending surveys to the right audience ensures that the questions and things discussed are relevant to them. This might seem like an obvious tip, but believe me when I tell you, some people take this for granted. If the questions are aligned with your audience's needs and interests, they are more likely to engage with them, ensuring higher quality feedback as well. Remember, depending on the audience, this will also contribute to the style of your surveys and content that's included. So maybe you're in e commerce and you're targeting only female shoppers. Keep your audience always in mind when creating your surveys. Basically, I would say adjust accordingly to fit the demographics. Now, using our website and in product surveys, you can actually use triggers to ease the process of targeting the right audience. So this means you can trigger surveys by key events, such as showing the survey only to users from a chosen visit source, for example. Basically, you get a chance to display your survey to the right people. So the better you segment your visitors, the higher your response rate will be. Now, if you're running a mobile app, we've got you covered as well, as you can target your mobile service to specific screens, a certain group of visitors, and more. I'll be going over that briefly during the demonstration as well, so stay tuned for that. And while the right audience will ensure a higher response rate, knowing what channels to put your surveys on is no exception. If you've got a clear cut goal, you will also have a better idea of the channel or channels that you should be focusing on, right? For example, if you've got questions pertaining to your blog, use website surveys that target that specific blog, right? You wouldn't ask somebody about a specific article in an email, right? Get them right where they are and make sure the relevant questions or make sure to ask the relevant questions to ensure a higher engagement and response rate of the surveys that you're dishing out. Also, consider the fact that depending on your objectives, going with a multi channel approach could be a great way to maximize the reach and enhance response rates. Respondents are far more likely to engage with a survey if it's delivered through their preferred or most convenient channel. So don't forget that. And whether we like it or not, first impressions count, and surveys are no exception here. A survey introduction sets the tone of what your visitors can expect and an incentive to complete it as well. So, to make an effective intro, and this doesn't have to be a rule, of course, as every survey objective might be a little different. You can use these tips if you're having trouble. So, you can state who you are, why you are asking for their input, how you will use the data, how long it will take to complete, and a conclusion that will get them more excited to take your survey again in the future, right? If you don't state what you want your respondent to do and why their participation matters, a strong and precise call to action could also encourage them to participate. And if they still won't budge, it's nothing money can't fix. I'm kidding, of course, kind of. Incentives such as discounts for a product, uh, gift cards, or even free ebooks can go a long way in getting people to actually take part in your survey. So we consider that. Survey length. So imagine imagine somebody walks up to you with a clipboard and says, "Excuse me, can I ask you 57 questions right now?" And then another person walks up with another clipboard and smiles and says, "Hi, I only have 2 questions for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which one are you more likely to partake in?" The shorter survey, of course. If you want people to complete your surveys, make sure that you don't overwhelm them with questions. This is called question fatigue. Now, not too long ago, we actually analyzed over 265, I believe, yeah, 265,000 responses from surveys that were conducted by our customers using Survicate. And here's what we found. First off, surveys that included 1 to 3 questions had an average completion rate of 83.34%. And that rate dropped down to 65.15% in 4 to 8 question surveys. Furthermore, surveys with 9 to 14 questions had a completion rate of 56.28%, while those with 15 and more had a completion rate of 41.95%. I think you're starting to get the pattern here, right? The shorter the better if you're looking for people to actually complete your surveys. However, there are exceptions. So if there's no way that you can avoid it and you're running a long survey, it's better you reward people for their time, right? We sort of went over this during the first impression counts part, but yeah, some businesses like to offer gift cards, other offer free ebooks. It's really up to you. Now, if you can avoid a long survey, try to keep it under 1 to 3 minutes if you can. Put yourself in their shoes, right? You're more likely to take part in a survey that won't be taking much of your time, right? And to keep things moving along smoothly, ask valid questions, and more importantly, use close ended questions as much as you can. Why? Because they are less time consuming and they typically generate quantitative data that is easy to analyze and summarize. So, survey timing. Yeah, timing also plays a big part in who will actually engage with your surveys. For example, let's say somebody just purchased your new product. It wouldn't make it wouldn't make sense to send them a survey immediately after the purchase, right? You don't want to bombard fresh customers with questions about an item they didn't even truly get a chance to experience yet, right? So take the time and research what days or hours are best for your customer base. You can even use specific triggers within Survicate as long such as logged in status or subscription type to truly pinpoint the timing of your service where it makes the most sense. It will go over some trigger options during the crafting portion, so stay tuned for that, please. Okay, what else we got here? Okay, transactional versus relational surveys. This is something I wanted to touch up on as well. So for transactional surveys, this means, for example, like right after an interaction. So things like feedback after a product purchase, for example, or a chat session you just had with a customer support representative. These type of surveys help you gauge what the customer might feel at specific points in their journey, and it will help you also in refining that experience. Now, relational surveys are sent in specific intervals for the best over time results. So they focus on the bigger picture, helping you assess the ongoing relationship with your brand to determine customer loyalty. They're less frequent but regularly. So yeah, they're less frequent but regular. So this means so they're usually conducted quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. A lot of companies implement relational NPS surveys in this way to compare year over year improvement. Okay, best practices. Let's keep going. Multilingual support. Yeah. There are many times where maybe your Spanish speaking customers understand some English, but not at all of it, right? This discourages them to partake in the surveys you're sending out if you're mainly using English in your surveys, for example. Of course, it depends on your audience and all of that. Mm, if you've got a global customer base, make your surveys multilingual. And we have a pretty neat way of handling that with Survicate, and I'll definitely be going over that during the crafting portion in a little bit as well. When you customize the experience for your respondents, you increase the response rate because you're ensuring that your contacts see the survey in their language. Okay. Okay, so this is the last one, I believe, for the powerful practices, and it's giving your respondents a heads up. Just like we discussed earlier, with how much of an impact the first impression makes, letting your respondents know that you'll be sending them a survey and looking for their feedback is particularly useful, especially for target groups like busy professionals, right? When you set the context, you also set the expectations, ensuring more people take it and that the feedback is that of higher quality as well. So, we went over the importance of getting your first survey response and how to build on that using some of our powerful practices. How about we take all of that information and I show you how you can craft your own effective survey? Let's do this. All right, so here we are in the main dashboard of Survicate and we're ready to start crafting our first survey. Now, if you remember a little earlier, I mentioned the importance of having a clear cut goal before even starting your survey. So ask yourself this question: what's the survey's objective and what will the tone and content of it be? You don't want to fall into the urge of trying to uncover too many things at once with one survey, right? This is a sure way to discourage your respondents from taking part in it. All right, so once you've established your goals and objectives for your survey, we can get started. So I click on the create new survey button and I'm met with the channel distribution screen. We've got four channels to choose from: email or shareable link survey, website or in product surveys, mobile app surveys, and intercom messenger surveys. For the sake of this demonstration, let's say we're running a blog on a website. So let's choose the website surveys to get us started. Now we can either start from scratch, as you can see here, or choose from one of our lovely templates to speed things up. If you don't know where to begin, no worries. We've got over 400 expertly designed templates for you to choose from. Let's see what we got. All right, and there we go. There's a lot of templates to choose from. But to simplify the process, you can take full advantage of our newly added AR-powered search bar, which you can see right here. It takes into account the user's search phrase plus the relevant information that you've shared with us, such as your goals, and it takes that and suggests some templates to help you get started. So for this demonstration, let's go with blog. Let's see what we got. Boom, right away. Improve your blog content strategy. Perfect. And you'll see at the bottom here, it shows you how many questions it includes and how long it will take for your respondents to take this survey. 1 minute. Great. Remember, powerful practices segment. I mentioned the ideal survey should be between 1 to 3 minutes. So I think we've got a winner here. Once you click on that, you'll get a general description here of the survey as well as a preview of it on the right side here. You can even click through it right now just to see how it works and looks. We get to see the basically how it is. And yeah, so let's take a look inside and actually see the inner workings of it and see what you can do or what you can change up to make it even more effective for this scenario. So let's use this template. Perfect. All right, so we've got our website template, and the goal here is that it's going to help us with our blog content strategy. If you see on the right side here, you can see it previewed, but you can also see that it might be missing a little flavor. So let's change that, fit it to our needs by using the design tab here. You can choose different themes to match your brand identity right away. You can see the colors changing here. Let's go with this one. And you could dig even deeper by hitting the edit button there. And you could customize the different colors of the questions, answers, buttons, stuff like that. Let's see what we got. I'll do something like this to make it stand out a little bit more. Okay, great. If you go into the customization, you will see that you can also add your company logo as well as enable CSS. Let's update the theme and we can go into the settings here. Yeah, there's even more customization options for you to try, such as remove the Survicate branding, start the survey minimized on mobile or on desktop, adding a close button, and even where you would like the survey to appear. Let's choose the lower right corner. Yeah. And remember, all of this can play a crucial role in helping your survey stand out. So don't forget to see what works best for your scenario. Now, I want to quickly touch up on translations as well. Mhm. With website surveys, you can create surveys in any language and display them to the relevant visitors. With our multilingual survey support, essentially, you can create one survey in many languages. I mentioned this earlier during the powerful practices part, and that's awesome. This will ensure that you're reaching a global customer base and getting far more responses than you would if you just stuck to one language, right? So let's add another language. How about let's do French? And of course, you'll see it. Yeah, this is the pop-up here, asking you to choose which language you want in your survey. And you can, of course, translate the questions and answers, messages manually or automatically in seconds using Google Translate. And of course, you can edit the translations should you need to. And I've already have some choices here I did earlier for this example. Let's go back to English. So let's go back to our survey. We've customized it to our liking with the design and colors. What else are we missing here? You know what? I think this survey is missing a short introduction to get people's attention, right? So let's add that. We can go into the add new question, welcome message. This is our introduction. How about something like take, or no, let's be polite. Please take this short survey and receive a free ebook. It won't take more than a minute. Yeah, now, cool, we got that. We want to move it to the beginning, right? So, another thing to mention is this. Mm, the cool thing about templates is that they take full advantage of our survey logic feature as well. Basically, using logic, you keep the survey questions relevant to your respondents. That way, you're not losing anybody's attention and you're letting the questions flow naturally, right? A quick example of that, using logic, we made it so that if the respondent answers no thanks, like here, it leads them right to the end of the survey, ending their journey. So that's cool. As you can imagine, there are countless of ways you can use logic to ensure that you keep your respondents fully engaged in your surveys. Remember, uh, apart from that, remember that avoid formulating questions that are difficult to understand. It could throw them off and ultimately discourage them from taking the survey in the first place. Make sure to use both closed and open ended feedback questions, kind of like I did in here. Ideally, you'll want to focus on closed ended questions, but if some surveys require to go the extra step, add open ended questions for sure. And remember to end the survey with a call to action wherever it makes sense. And I can't stress this enough because the thing is, you've got an introduction that grabs attention, and just as great as your start was, the end has to be just as good or even better. Think of it like doing a ski jump, right? The liftoff is just as important as the landing. So for this survey, let's do something like this. We'll add a button, which will lead them to a website. And how about claim your free ebook? Nice. And we want to do that here as well, just in case. No matter who takes this survey, it will lead them to the free ebook. Claim your free ebook. Mhm. So, looks good. We've got our survey. It's time to move to the target tab. Mm, this will get even more precise, so we're hitting the right audience. That way, we're getting more people to actually take part in it, and the feedback is of higher quality naturally. Now, a quick note here: depending on the distribution channel that you choose, targeting your customers might look a little different. For example, since I've chosen a website survey, I'm met with these specific targeting options, as you can see. Now, if you chose, for example, an email or link survey, the targeting there would have to be done through your email platform. So, like MailChimp, for example. All right, so let's get back to it. Now, to ensure we're maximizing the reach, we can also use triggers, as you can see here, triggers, to ensure that it appears exactly when you want it to, depending on the situation. So, do you want it to show up on all of your pages or just a specific one? And when would you like to show the survey? Instantly after a page delay, when a user is about to exit, this one's great for seeing exit intent, or when a user has scrolled through a page. So you can add your value here. For our little demonstration, let's do this. Actually, let's use this. We're imagining that someone's visiting our blog and they're scrolling down, reading, reading, reading. And when they reach the end, let's say maybe even 60%, the survey will pop up. Cool. Okay. And yeah, so you can pinpoint your audience even further by actually going into the audience tab here. Mhm. If you remember, sending surveys to the right audience ensures that the questions and things discussed in your surveys are relevant to them. Since the questions are aligned to their needs and interests, in this case, they're more likely to engage with it, getting your first of many responses. So let's create an audience. And for this example, we'll be calling this specific page, or maybe even visited page. Uh-huh. And then we'll add a filter, and we'll be using the visited URLs filter because we're going to target this survey to appear only for people who have already entered into our other blog sections, for example, right? Let's say they've been here, and we'll use URL contains, and I'm going to be using this for the demonstration, and we'll create the audience like so. And now we'll turn it on, and it is on. All right, and now we can move on to the next step, which is the integrations tab. Here is the place where you can integrate Survicate and your survey with your favorite tools. There are a lot to choose from, and essentially, you'll be doing this if you want to implement our surveys within your workflows, even helping you automate the whole customer feedback process as well. But for today, we'll be skipping this as we're looking just to craft effective surveys. So, this brings us to the launch tab, which is how we're going to, you guessed it, launch our website survey. Now, something to something important to note here. Website surveys and mobile app surveys require you to install a tracking code. Since I've already done that, I'm free to launch it immediately, as you can see. But if you were to be doing this for the first time, here's where you'd find the instructions to install your tracking code. The awesome news is that it's a one-click automated installation process, so you'll be on your way in no time. All right, so back to the launch tab. You've got a few options to choose from, including if you want to launch it right now or schedule it. You can set the maximum number of responses you like to collect with the survey, and of course, you also have a cutoff date should you need it. So let's launch it right now. We click Start Now, and our survey is officially live. And this brings us to a crucial point, testing your survey. How do you even know if it's working? After you've got everything up and ready, actually take the time to test out your surveys, please. The goal here is to create effective surveys and to get you on your journey to your first survey response. If your survey isn't working, that's not going to pan out too well. So for our website survey, I'll just paste in the address and see how it's looking, or if it's even working, right? So we scroll down and there we have it. As you can see, wait, you can't really see. Let me move my little circle here. There we go. The uh, the survey is here. Everything looks nice. You can answer all the questions. Great. Let me just put in my name here. Uh-huh. And I'm going to claim my free ebook, which takes us to the free ebook page. Perfect. Great. So, and because testing your surveys is important, I wanted to quickly go over how you do that with an email and shareable link survey as well. I've already got one to show you right here. So you can simply go into your survey like this, go into the share tab, copy the link, paste that into the address bar, and there we go. You can take your survey, test that out, see if it works. Everything looks fine. Perfect. Great. And that's all there is to it. All right, and that concludes my little demonstration here. As you can see, crafting an effective survey isn't difficult at all, especially if you've got some great templates to work with. I'm hoping this will give you the confidence to start creating your own surveys as well. Remember, it's all about making your surveys relevant, engaging, and easy for your audience to take. Now, hopefully, you're starting to get the bigger picture of how getting your first survey response is kind of like the first domino that sets everything in motion, paving the way for gathering high quality feedback from your respondents. All right, I think we're ready to move on to the Q&A. Let's do this.
All right, and before we get into the Q&A, I wanted to quickly mention our Black Friday deal that's wrapping up tomorrow. So this is basically your last chance to take advantage of this offer. And what's the offer? If you buy a yearly Survicate subscription or switch to one from a monthly plan, you get an additional month for free. That's right. All you gotta do is enter the secret code on our website chat or email our support team and mention it during a conversation. The secret code is feedback is the new black. Make sure to grab that. This deal is active, I believe, until tomorrow, so the 30th of November. If you have any questions relating to it, feel free to reach out. Okay, so let's get to those questions. I see we have one from, let me see here. Okay, we'll answer this one quickly from Maria. The question is, do you have an example of a survey among Survicate customers that received the highest number of responses ever? And that's a great question, right? Who's reached the Mount Everest of survey responses? The truth is, we have a lot of customers who are getting some impressive numbers on a consistent basis. The most recent that I can think of is one where the customer was getting thousands of survey responses on a monthly basis. I'm talking like 50,000 with a series of NPS surveys used throughout different distribution channels. So, yeah, that's definitely possible to do. And let me see here. Yeah. Now, what I want to do is take care of the questions that were asked by customers during the webinar registration process. If you remember, there was an area there to write in your questions. And since there were quite a few questions, in fact, there were some really neat ones. Let's try to answer as many as we can right now within the time limit. So the first one is from Roberto. And his question was, I think I made even a slide for it. Yes. How to make sure respondents are identified for various survey types. And I kind of went over this in the demonstration, but we can go over it again in more depth. So, depending on how you're distributing your surveys, there are certain things you need to make sure you do, right, to ensure that they're properly identified. So if you're sending out your surveys through email or using a link, an important thing to remember is that when you're creating your survey and you don't select any email software as a distribution tool by default, this will give you anonymous responses, right? So make sure to include your distribution tool in there. So tools like, you'll find tools like HubSpot, MailChimp, Klaviyo, right? All the classics. And of course, what customer data will be passed with your survey results will depend on the tool that you're connecting Survicate with. Additionally, if we don't support your favorite distribution tool, you can always edit the survey link to recognize respondents using merge tags. I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Now, if you are sending out surveys on your website or in product, in order to properly identify your respondents, mm, yeah, you will need to pass visitor attributes to capture IDs to Survicate using the tracking code, right? Which basically means you need to paste an additional code right before the regular Survicate tracking code that you would on your website. It may sound somewhat complex, but I can assure you, you'll get it done. We've got step-by-step instructions in our help center if you need it, or if you have a developer on your team, get him to do it, right? And last but not least, if you want to make sure your respondents are being identified on your mobile app, you need to pass user traits from your app to Survicate using mobile SDK, right? Meaning you need to have that installed in order for everything to work properly. We have a whole developers section dedicated for that on our website, so be sure to check that out. And this kind of leads up to a follow-up question, I believe, and it is how to pass additional respondent data to Survicate. This was asked by the same person, Roberto, so thank you for sending that in. If you want to pass additional respondent data, when identifying your email survey respondents, for example, you need to use merge tags. As I just mentioned when answering the last question, if you're sending out a survey with a platform we support, you'll be able to easily identify respondents because the links we generate already use merge tags, right? So passing additional data requires a little bit more brain power and research because every platform can have a different way they construct merge tags. So, for example, if you want to pass the respondent's phone number using intercom, you'll need to use specific merge tags dedicated to that platform. And I found that the best way to find out what each platform merge tag construction looks like is by simply going to their help center if they have one, and usually they do. They'll have a list of like data attributes and merge tags that you're able to use from there. So let's see, what else do we have? Another question, which was, do you record partial responses? This comes from Aisha. The answer to this question is, of course, yes, meaning no matter whether a respondent completed the survey or only partially answered the questions in your survey, a survey response counts as one respondent submission of a survey, right? So whether they completed it or partially answered it, yes, we record partial responses. Basically, we collect and give you a chance to check both completed and partial submissions in the analysis tab, as we found that most people find them valuable. All right, so let's go to the next question, which is, let me just hit the slide here. How to make sure respondents don't skip questions in my survey. This one comes from Amir. That's the $1 million question, I suppose, right? How do we get people to actually stay engaged and not skip any of our questions? But yeah, as mentioned during the presentation, design plays a big role here as well, right? Making sure your questions are clear and easy to understand. Confusing questions may lead to respondents simply skipping them, right, naturally. But also make sure to arrange the questions in a logical order, right, to maintain a certain flow. You don't want them to start panicking right off the bat. So start with easy questions to keep them hooked. And you can like work your way up to complex ones if you've got some ready. And another great way to make sure your respondents are not skipping questions is you can actually make them mandatory. If you've already used Survicate, you'll notice that some question types are mandatory by default. So it's not even possible to skip them. So there's like single answer selection questions or NPS questions, right? And a few others. But there are some question types that are not mandatory. For example, I believe the text answer question type, I believe this is correct. And contact form question is not mandatory. But if you would like to make it mandatory, it's as easy as clicking on the question and hitting the settings tab and turning on the answer required switch. I think I even added the little photo right there. So keep the survey questions easy to follow, easy to take. And if that doesn't work, make it mandatory. But that should be like a last resort, I would say, because you want your respondents to want to take your surveys, right? You want quality feedback, not forced feedback. All right, next question, which is how to make sure every respondent can only answer the survey once. Okay, this is an interesting one, and it comes from Jamie. Also a great question. There's various ways you can do this. For example, if you're working on a website or in-product survey, you can go to the frequency menu and simply choose never show the survey again. You can do something similar for mobile surveys as well. And when it comes to email, there is a setting in the configure tab that simply says something like allow this survey to be taken a couple or multiple times from the same browser. And you can either take that on or off and you're good to go. Yeah. And let's see here. Yeah. And with that question, I think we're ready to wrap this up. If I didn't get to your question, but I believe I went through all of them, please know that I will personally reach out to you regarding that in case you have maybe some questions that come up later, right? So thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. I'd like to thank Agnieszka, who was with us on chat moderating. You rock. Thank you for doing that. As a reminder, I will be sending out a recording of this webinar to everyone that registered today. So look out for that in your mailbox, probably, I would say, by the time I upload it and all that good stuff, probably tomorrow. If you enjoy this webinar, we've got more for you. Next week, I'll also be hosting a webinar on different NPS survey feedback strategies. So feel free to register for that as well. We've actually got a cool new webinar directory on our website where you can check out previous webinars, future webinars, and all that cool stuff. So feel free to check that out. Okay. Yeah, that's it for my end. Thank you everyone once again, and have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope to see you at the next one. Take care.